Welcome back to CDS. My name is Cephalopod, and this is the week 4 match. I'm against Sirturmund this week. His lineup is on the left, mine's on the right. He's got access to those 9 champions. I have access to these 10. And for this tournament, you only get access to the regions where you have champions from. So he has completely no access to Demacia, Ionia, or Shurima. I have access to every region once. Rumble gives me Noxus and Vandal and Ahri and Set both double up on Ionia. I can bring 2 Ionia decks if I so please. So this week, there's kind of 4 things that I expect him to run, and you'll notice the highest win rate deck in Eternal is in this lineup. It's actually Kale Vlad Pisukaru pile, 72% win rate, 170 games. I did not know that when I was making this slideshow. I made the slideshow as I was prepping, so there's like, you get to kind of work through it with me as I make my lineup. If you want to skip to the gameplay, I'll put a timestamp. But this is what I was expecting, these kind of 4 archetypes. Endure, because he just traded for the Volibear, so I was definitely expecting to see some Volibear. Traded for the Volibear, so the 2 things Volley could be is either Endure or Ramp, is my guess. It could also be Battle Fury, but Battle Fury also benefits from hard removal, is how you beat Endure. So there's kind of 4 targets, and each of the things to beat those 4 targets, if I want to beat Endure, I gotta remove an arbitrarily large unit, and aka Siren Song Zolani is a possibility from this lineup. That's something that's going to get hit by the same target that Endure would get hit by. Temple and Tree, for much the same reason. If I can kill landmarks, I'm going to be good into these decks. Maokai Mill is a harder nut to crack, but it is something that I'm expecting him to do. He's brought it twice before. And Volley Ramp is something that is becoming very popular on the ranked ladder, and is something I'll definitely not be surprised to see. So, for any deck that I put in my lineup, I want it to follow 3 or 4 of these rules. If possible, all 4. Number 1, hard removal, at least 3 of. Landmark removal, at least 3 of, probably more. Because I need to kill Temple on site. I cannot allow a single active. So 3 to 3, landmark removal versus landmark is actually not even good. Probably 4. Kill their champions, and against these champions, a lot of them have surprisingly 4 health. So anything that deals 4 is going to be pretty good. We're looking at Aphelios plus Pale, that's 4. Level Desert, that's 4. TF plus Suit Up, that's 4. Vagar Maokai, those are both 4. And then there's a couple of higher HP champions. But those higher HP champions are one that he's used much less. The 4 damage is definitely huge. They're like 3-3, 2-4, 1-4 type of stat line. And also don't take too long to win, because if I take too long, then Maokai's going to outscale me, Volibear's going to outscale me. I'm not going to really win a long, extended attrition battle against his lineup. So there's, they match up rule versus the deck that is trying to target. So if I follow rule 1 across all my 3 decks, I'm going to be good to do Endure. If I follow rule 2 across all of my 3 decks, I'm going to be good at STF. So it's sort of like, if I follow all these rules, then I'm good into those. But if I don't follow a rule, I'll have to ban that one. That's kind of where I'm standing. So let's get started. Let's start building the lineup. That's what we want the lineup to accomplish, but let's get to it. What do I want to answer Zolani and Endure with? Primarily, it's going to be SI. SI has the great benefit of having Vengeance. They have like 3 or 4 other things that also answer Endure / Zolani satisfactorily. Like, SI is amazing at answering Endure. Targon has Sunburst. They have also Hush in the Cellstones, which is pretty good. So Sunburst, even though it doesn't deal an infinite amount of damage, it can kill these infinitely large units because it can silence them down to be 2/2s or 1/1s. Homecoming can answer them, but it's not like crazy against Zolani, but it is crazy against Endure. And then Silence and Suppress is one that I was really happy about, like, considering, because it answers Zolani and Endure like really convincingly and on the cheap. That's something I'm definitely thinking about. Landmark removal. What regions do landmark removal? Oh wait, it's all of them, because even though Octo Adventurer is kind of the weakest one, it's still really good. And if I am in Bilge, I will do it. If I'm in PZ, I'll do it. Every deck can play three Explorer, but not every deck can do this rule 1, which is kill and Endure. So across my 3 decks, I'm probably gonna have 1 deck be SI, 1 deck be Targon, and 1 deck be Ionia, because I can't really double it up, except for that, unless I have 2 champions from play 2 decks. So if I want to be able to remove Endures, I gotta play with these 4 regions only. And like, obviously Noxus can do it, but Rumble and Disintegrate are both, you don't really put Disintegrate in a Rumble deck very often, and Bilge and Shurima and PZ like literally cannot deal with it. So if I'm gonna play Bilge PZ, I gotta pair it up with these kind of like removal regions. The backline champs. What do I want to do against backline champs? These are like 4 HP across most of them, and these like Vagar type champions, these Maokai type champions, these Aphelios type champions, they're never ever going to enter combat, but they will win the game by themselves if I don't answer them. So I gotta have some backline removal. Culling Strike, Soul Harvest, I think are complete premium this week. These are like the best possible champion lineup to go fight if I've got, or the best week I could ever fade for Culling Strike and Soul Harvest. This is a completely amazing, like, 3 mana to kill a 4 mana champion, super high value, especially if that 4 mana champion's like a Maokai. Ray of the Arcane is kind of considering Rocket Barrage and PZ. PZ doesn't really deal 4 that much, but Rocket Barrage is that. And then 4 HP challengers are oftentimes going to be good enough. Like Set, like Screeching Dragon. Fishfight conditionally is also good enough. So we're looking at these 3 rules, and the only region that fulfilled all 3 rules was Shadow Isles. So Shadow Isles, since it alone fulfills all the rules, anything I pair it with, I can pair it with anything. So what should I do? Oh, and the one rule it doesn't fulfill is Rule 4, which is Speed against the Maokai and the Volley. So I kind of mocked up a Aphelios Volley deck to like kind of see what I might be fighting. There's, you know, they can kill any unit basically with Sunburst, Seismic Shard. Like these single unit hard removal is going to be pretty easy for them to conjure up. They've got maybe some freezes, maybe some avalanche, maybe some falling star, and then just like big blockers try to slow me down. And then this is the Evelyn Maokai. He's run this exact list twice, so this would be what I would have to contend with, which is mostly like, you know, Feast and Undergrowth kill like 1 to 2 drops, Soul Harvest and Haste kill like 3 drops, and Vengeance kills bigger stuff at a 2x. So I was thinking, okay, if they have a lot of like single target removal in like Sunburst / Seismic Shard, I could just go really wide across like a Vandal deck and play Ferocious Fluffs as a win con. These next like 10 slides are all just decks that I was considering. Bane Kindred. This is like, you know, this is the craziest misdirect deck you'll ever see because it's running Venge 3x, Soul Harvest 3x, Spectral Surveyor 2x. I mean, the reason I didn't play 3 Spectral Surveyor is I think the deck has enough speed that you're only really going to need 1 Spectral Surveyor to win the game. Against these, even like a tree deck. But yeah, this was something I was considering, and honestly, this was probably stronger bring than one that I did end up playing, so that was on the table. And then I was thinking about Maokai, and if he's going to obliterate my deck, what if I just repopulate my deck with Starlit Epiphany? And, you know, have, you know, they play Maokai Watery Grave, and my deck has 0 cards in it. I just play Starlit Epiphany, repopulate it with 20 cards, and I'm fine. And then at that point, I'm already playing 3 Starlit Epiphany. Why not just play some Monument? That's also something I could have done for this lineup, and it wouldn't have been that bad. I was thinking Vayne Rumble. I've done this in the past against Majin Bay. If I'm against people who like landmarks, then Rumble is pretty good. And this one I added some Culling Strike. I took out the Whirling Death. The spell count is creeping really high on this one. It's already at 16 spells. But that's mostly just because I added 3 copies of Culling Strike just as the sketch. And then Jack Set is another option. Something that I was building this Jack Set. I was working with the list I had from the previous week, and it's mostly the same. There's only 3 differences, or 4 differences actually. I put in 2 Notify, 1 Tag Out, and 1 Homecoming. The Tag Out is mostly to like save my own unit when it's dying, and then maybe in a pinch it can like throw an Iceborne Thrall back to their hand against Bowdeer. Notify is pretty good in this matchup especially against like Maokai. They're trying to like obliterate my deck. I can Notify that. But Homecoming, I realized, is actually kind of fulfilling multiple roles. It can hit landmarks, so it's good against Temple, and it can hit like Endure size units, so it's good as removal. So it's just kind of perfect for this week. Like Homecoming is really good, and then my thought process was, if Homecoming is really good, then why not play Ahri? Now, okay, this is admittedly where my mind went with Ahri, was play it with Vayne, which, you know, kind of crackhead idea. This is much more normal, and this I liked a lot. Even just looking at it, it looks a lot better than the Demacia. Like, holy moly. Okay, so I tried this on ladder, and I won a game, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of decent. But I realized the deck was like really, really unoptimized, and if I was ever going to bring this, I had to fix the deck because it's in disrepair at the moment. So problem number 1 was I was running SC, so I had to add 3 sign in. And also Venge I felt was unnecessary because I mean, you already have Homecoming to deal with big units, and it just costs so much mana to do basically the same thing that Soul Harvest does, which is kill a champion most of the time. So Vengeance out. Vengeance out. I went down to 2 Portal Pioneer as well, because if I am in a matchup where I just want to cycle Portal Pioneer, I can just recall Portal Pioneer over and over, and that's totally fine. And then my final edit to this deck was taking out the, or putting in the Singular Will, I should say, to really properly answer Bodier. And this is already looking really good, because it has the hard removal, Homecoming and Singular Will, to deal with like big ramped out dudes. It has, you know, answers to landmarks, 5x at a minimum. That's before you even count me recalling my Portal Pioneer. It's 5x because you have Homecoming and Portal Pio. And it has the speed, crucially, that the Kindred SI was really missing, because Foyer plus Ahri is one of the highest DPS boards in the game. Like, you can have really high damage on like Invoke boards, can deal like 100 damage in 1 turn. Ahri with like 9 stacks of Opulent Foyer with the Twin Disciplines, you're looking at 100 damage coming into the Nexus. Like, it's a disgusting amount of damage. So Ahri with Foyer, especially leveled up Ahri with Foyer, like, goddamn, that does so much damage. And then I'm insulating myself against aggro a little bit by putting in some Boisterous Hosts. So this deck I did end up running, but if you've been following my CDS journey, my one loss in the CDS was because I brought this Ahri deck, which was Star-Crossed Lover's Ahri. And even though it's an Ahri deck, it is completely different than the one that I was just highlighting, because the only similarities I've highlighted with the red brackets, but I've realized that the Ahri Cannon relies a lot on Cannon for like removal, and the fact that I don't have access to Cannon in the Imminent Champion Draft series means that I need to acknowledge that recall spells like Navori Conspirator that might double as removal in an Ahri Cannon deck don't double as removal in an Ahri set Soraka deck. So you have to play more removal like the Soul Harvest, like the Notify. And also, this deck, it's like, if you look at the differences, right? If you look at the unhighlighted things, Shadow Shift, Capsize, Navori Conspirator, Star-Crossed Lovers, all of those 11x are recalls, which help level the Ahri. But in this SI deck, Ahri does not need to be leveled. Like, it's not an issue if Ahri just comes down as 0 out of 5. Because as long as I have any amount of stacks, I've had 1 Boisterous Host die. I'm already happy to see an Ahri in my hand, because Ahri just puts out a huge amount of damage, even if she's unleveled. So that's a big bonus. And this deck obviously stinks into aggro, and I got 2-0'd by aggro. And this one much better against aggro. So it's a night and day difference for my first deck. So that's the first one I ended up bringing. Second one was this Jack set idea with the 1 Homecoming. It's just super strong. Like, this deck is unreal broken, honestly. Like, it's not actually balanced, and it's teched further for the matchups for this week with the extra notifies. So it's so OP. The third deck I brought is Vain Rumble, which I ended up slimming down the spell count to 13, which I think is a positive for sure. I was considering putting in Prismatic Barrier here or Riposte, but I ended up deciding against it. But the idea is kind of the same, is just go after these like temple decks, try to aggro them down as quick as possible. This one, I could have gone for something else, and it was definitely the odd man out in my lineup in terms of like having a lose condition that includes losing rumbles, right? So what did my opponent bring? They brought exactly basically what we expected. All 3 of these decks that we brought were on the fucking presentation, okay? Like, I did not edit the presentation. This was I, was assembling it as I was prepping the lineup. So they brought their Evelyn Mill deck, they brought their STF Temple deck, and they brought that middle deck is Battle Tree deck with the Vladimir. So let's take a deeper look at what these deck lists have. Evelyn deck, they have exactly the same 40. They literally did not change anything. It is the same. So this is 2 Vengeance still, 3 Water Graves still. It's just the same. This one, Tree deck, is maybe more interesting. They've got 3, and as you might expect, 3 Flock, but they've also got Disintegrates in there. And they've also got a couple of Mini-Morph, standard with the Tree deck. So they've got basically like Ping plus Execute between Flock, Disintegrate. Ping, Execute is their removal suite, and they're just playing a ton of Trump blockers. Third deck as Temple, again, same deck as before. This is the exact 40 cards that they brought the previous week. They are running back 80 out of 120. So I had better win because I saw all of this in advance. So if I don't win, that'd be crazy. Here's the matchup spread as I kind of see it is I've got 8 winning matchups. But the only one that's not a winning matchup is Rumble against Tree, because they can actually just kill 3 Rumbles if they have a good hand. And if I have a bad hand, I won't have 3 Rumbles. So it's not a guarantee I'll have 3 Rumbles, and even if I do, they can sometimes kill. So unfavored there. And everything else, super good, honestly. And you'll notice 2 100s. Like, if I play Ahri against Tree, I have 5 landmark removals at minimum. There's no world. Also, Ping Execute is a very ineffective removal suite against Nopify Ahri. Like, it is fucked. And also, if I have a Foyer, they can't remove landmarks. It's just... If we play that matchup 90 times, I will win 90 times. If we play it 100 times, I'll win it 100 times. That is unplayably bad. So, I'm looking at 2 100% matchups, and I just cannot look myself in the mirror if I ban that deck. So, I don't ban Tree, and I ban Temple instead, which I think is a bit of a misplay, because I left them with their 1 winning matchup available to them. And indeed, game 1, where do we find ourselves but in that losing matchup? Rumble versus Tree. So, here's the mulligan. I keep 2 Rumbles. I'm on odds, which is a bit unfavorable, because they get a little bit more time to live, because my first Rumble is hitting them on turn 5 instead of turn 4. So turn 2, we just trade 2 drops. Turn 3, I set up my Armed Acquisitioner so that I can play the Rumble on turn 4, and then if they kill it, I can try to Rumble on 6 and just continue from there. But they have Prio first on turn 4, which means Aloof hits me, and then my Rumble is gone, which means bad things about my chances in this game, because they've already killed one of the Rumbles without having to spend really any proper removal. So that's not good. That is really, really bad start to this game, because I lost the 50-50 on turn order and further got my Rumble Aloof. So Rumble turn 5, I gotta spend 3 mana to draw him. I play him out. They play Veigar to pop the Spell Shield, and then I go in for a Cataclysm, because in this position, as bad as it seems, is not horrible, because they do have to actually have Disintegrate. I beat Flock here. If they're trying to go ping Flock or even double ping Flock, not gonna work. It has to be Disintegrate. Because Rumble's about to reapply Spell Shield once he hits the Veigar. And obviously they can't allow that, so they gotta kill him beforehand. So they can, ping in response to Cataclysm, and then in response to the attack resolving, they can execute with a Flock. But if they try that, they're gonna lose the game. So I'm hoping that's what their hand is like single Flock plus ping, maybe just double Flock no ping, maybe just a ton of pings and no executes. But indeed it was Disintegrate, and that's game 1 in the books. Game 2. We're down 1-0. We gotta win with Ahri Kindred against the middle deck. Here's the mulligan. Portal Pioneer isn't really for this matchup, but Nopify definitely is, so I keep the Nopify. Opulent Foyer, I'm definitely thinking, with a defense turn 3, Opulent Foyer is pretty much optimal. So I'm keeping that. And then Kindred is, fine for a turn 4 play. So, pass, Foyer, Kindred is, it's fine. I'm pretty chill to go pass, Foyer, Kindred, if that's what it comes to. So, indeed, we draw Droplet, and I choose not to play the Droplet here because I don't feel like Nopifying a Feast. That's kind of the worst value Nopify I could get in their deck. Even though I can definitely protect this guy, I can't recall him yet, and optimally, I would like to play him with Recall Backup, or even just Ahri plus Twin. Some kind of, way to recall the Droplet would be. So I'm gonna forego the 1 damage in this case and just go ahead and pass until turn 4, or turn 3, so I can play 4. They do the same, drop a 2-drop, and go turn 4, and this is my favorite pass of the tournament so far through 4 weeks, and this is turn 4 pass against a deck that's outscaling me. So usually, in general, you cannot make these type of passes into a deck that outscales you. But Maokai is similar to Set in the way that they don't really outscale you unless they do stuff throughout the game. Maokai has to have units die, Set has to have mana spent. So a complete stone cold pass here is totally fine because Maokai is not progressing. And if we were to, by some crazy world, advance the game to turn 10, both of us have 10 cards in hand, 13 mana to work with, Ahri is the one that wins in that case. So if for some crazy reason we both pass forever, Ahri is the one that outscales in that weirdo case. But in a normal case where we're both spending all our mana, Maokai's outscaling because it's turn 8-ish is when my deck gets obliterated and So here's a pass, they pass back and go Ahri, or not Ahri, Evelyn on turn 5. I play a second Foyer, so now we've got 2 Foyers on board, and I decide to, I'm really mulling this one over, but I do decide to try to shoot the Evelyn with a Soul Harvest. And this one is a very telling play from their hand, because basically no matter what they do, I'm gonna know what's in their hand. Because almost any hand, I can pick it apart if I know what's in it. And this Soul Harvest lets me, especially now that I drew a second one, so I'm not like just letting a Maokai resolve for free. I now have a second Soul Harvest, so I go ahead and try to shoot this. And here's their options in this spot. They have 2 Glimpse, 3 Feast, 3 Hate Spike, 3 Undergrowth, and those are in order of how much they would like to use them in this kind of case. So Evelyn, if you don't know how she works, if you kill the Husk, she will level up and she'll become 5/5. So if they kill the Husk with the Glimpse, that's like kind of optimal for the opponent. So if their hand is double Glimpse, then that is the situation that gives me the least information, because no matter what the rest of their hand is, they could have double Glimpse, triple Feast, triple Hate Spike in their hand, they would still just play those same 2 Glimpses. So double Glimpse is not great for me. But the good thing about attacking the Evelyn right now here on turn 5 is that they would not have kept any one of these 4 spells in their mulligans. So if ever there was a time to go for this kind of attack, it would be as early into the game as possible, because early game their hand is going to be saturated with things that they would mull for, so that'd be like Maokais, that'd be like maybe even Watery Graves. I don't actually know if you would keep Watery Grave, but it depends on the mulligan strategy, but you would always keep Maokai, so... And you would definitely never keep any of this stuff. Maybe you keep Glimpse. Probably not. It's essentially like this is the moment where they're going to have the least of these things. And it goes in order of what they would like to use, so if they have Glimpses, they'll use those. If they have Feast, they'll use those. And then, only then, if they have no Glimpse and Feast remaining, then they'll use a Hate Spike. So, in a very interesting turn of events, they use the Undergrowth, which is the last in the priority list, at least as far as I'm like thinking. They use the last in the priority list, which means 0 Glimpse, 0 Feast, 0 Hate Spike in their hand. And I was able to notify this to go ahead and kill the Evelyn, because, yeah, obviously great value. So, not only have we killed their Evelyn for, 5 mana for 7 trade, because they spent 7 mana between the Undergrowth and the Evelyn, and we spent 5 to kill it. Not only that, but we have basically like very, very strong information about what's in their hand. So this game's going great so far. But turn 6, I encourage you to pause and find the line here. There is exactly one play here that wins the game. Maybe not wins immediately, but like is way stronger than everything else. And that play, once again, is the blue button. Let them develop their play, whether it's Maokai, whether it's 4-drop, and then go. It is imperative to play it this way. Any other line is like, it's so inferior, it's crazy. So, we dodged that bullet of losing the game to a misplay. And now we know more what we're up against. And we couldn't play this Kindred before because we would tap out of killing Maokai, and they would be able to just, develop the Maokai that they would probably have in their hand at this point in the game. But here we were able to Kindred and safely, not use it. So, or safely not allow Maokai to develop. So we play the Kindred out and attack with it. And the reason this attack order has to be this way is because it pushes the most damage. Because they actually kind of can't block with this 2-1. And we know they can't block with the 2-1 because we know they don't have a Hate Spike from the earlier turn. We know they don't have a Hate Spike or Glimpse or Feast, all of which would allow them to chunk block underneath this Kindred and negate 7 damage. Especially Glimpse. But also Hate Spike kills the Kindred as well. So they are basically forced into a situation where they're going to, have to block with the dog, take a little bit of damage on the dog, but it won't die at least. And this 2-1 has to stay back, because if the 2-1 blocks and dies, Kindred kills this 6 HP dog for fucking free. So it's completely unblockable. 7 damage. And you might be wondering why we didn't Soul Harvest pre-combat if we're going to attack. The reason for that is if we Soul Harvest this dog pre-combat, then it activates the blocker. So then we actually deal less damage. So this way is the most possible damage because it utilizes the hidden information of this Soul Harvest in hand. So indeed we Soul Harvest the dog post-combat, and Kindred is able to execute the guy. Obviously they can't dodge the mark because they don't have any of those 3 spells that we checked for when we went to kill the Evelyn. So this is already coming up huge. So next they play Evelyn turn 7, and here is more of a refill turn. I decide to develop out a Boisterous Host and kind of obliterate a Boisterous Host for the next turn, which might be a misplay, admittedly, but here we are. And then, since they didn't play anything with that 4 mana, they burned 1. So we're thinking probably Venges, probably Watery Graves, probably Soul Harvests, possibly Undergrowth as well. We didn't check for second Undergrowth, so that's a possibility. Probably Maokai exists. But that's within this hand. And they have a pretty big hand. There's 8 cards in there, so there can't be like, you know, if there's an 8-card hand, there's got to be something in there, right? And that's probably, you know, the read up to this point. So knowing all of that, we should definitely develop into this, because there's only one thing that they could have to punish a develop, and even that punish doesn't punish a single prio develop, which is, we're gonna play Droplet here. That's Maokai. They have it, indeed. If they didn't have it, the game is completely fucking over, because I can develop Ahri with mana backup, and it's fucked for them. It's completely unplayable. But they did have the Maokai, which is the only thing that punishes develop, and it punishes a double develop, right? It punishes double develop because, let's say I play an Ahri here, they'll get, let's say, you know, play a unit, and it will get a sapling as well to block for free. So, and also the sapling will dodge the Kindred mark as well. Something I should mention. So, letting them get a sapling, not ideal. So here there's a bunch of options of like what we should do, and I think I choose the third best thing to do, which is Hoko Droplet to Maokai. And you can see the rope is already like burned away. Like, I ran out of time on this one. I realized what a better play would have been as I was locking this in with like no time left. So there's 2 better plays. I think this is the third best play. This is another spot where if you're trying to like watch to improve your own game, find the 2 better ones, and then also decide between them. If you're just here for the show, develop Ahri over top of the landmark, and Hoko landmark to Maokai are both stronger than what I did here. So if you found those right away, you're a better player than me. But deciding between them, I think recalling the landmark is the better play, but it's only because if you like, what's it called? If you don't recall the Maokai, let the Maokai chill, and play Ahri, you don't have a great use for Hoko this turn, and you probably don't Hoko on this turn. So, and if you don't Hoko now, it's like unlikely you're going to get a better Hoko. So Hoko's devalued, but you do get a better attack. So it's I think it is better to go with Landmark, but it's hard to tell, and I obviously didn't think of all this shit in game because I went with the completely wrong idea of playing Droplet, at which point they were able to contest me as hard as they were able, which was these Feast plus Undergrowth. Feast plus Undergrowth line. And the fact that I actually even made a secondary misplay. Like, I misplayed combo straight into another misplay, which was, even though I win in the interaction war, what I should have done was twin first. And twin, which guarantees the resolution of the Hoko, and hold the recall. Because, as it happens, they get to just keep the Maokai on the board and save a lot of mana that way, because they don't have to spend 4 to replay him. And either way, I would get the draw off the Droplet, because if Droplet gets recalled with Hoko, I get a draw. If it gets recalled off a recall, I'll get a draw. The reason I did this was because I was very worried about Beast getting a sapling, which I thought was not great, which honestly is a fair line of reasoning, but I think it is a little bit better to go twin first and hold recall. But that's how it resolves. And then they managed to top deck a Hate Spike, which is really, really bad, because suddenly, instead of Kindred, you know, probably... Because, okay, Kindred Mark this turn would go onto Scarab, right? But if Kindred has a shit ton of attack and they've got a chump block underneath it, who chump blocks? If you chump block with Scarab, Maokai gets marked and killed by Kindred, so it's a disaster. They cannot chump block with the Scarab. They have to chump block with the Evelyn. So I would kill Evelyn and Scarab here, but instead I don't kill the Scarab, and they keep the Maokai, and I lose all my damage because they top take a Hate Spike. So it's just disaster strikes. And we go next turn. They lead off with a Glimpse, which was a top deck Glimpse, which was like, okay, their hand is a disaster at this point. No units. They've got probably multiple copies of Watergrave if their hand is this much of a disaster. Maybe another Venge or something. But like, if they're leading off with the Glimpse, their hand is a fucking nightmare. And if their hand is a nightmare, I would love to keep it as a nightmare. So I'm going to deny this every time. So we go to turn 10. They've got no unit in there. I lead off with the Droplet, and they don't play a unit still, so we know their hand has no units, so I just continue developing my whole board. And this is the attack that we've got for turn 10. Another pretty fucking difficult puzzle is figure out what the optimal attack order here is. I've already showed my opponent's deck list earlier in the video, but if you could figure this out, congratulations, because I didn't. I fucked this one up. I went here, there you go, Soul Harvest, and then this attack order, I went Ahri first, which is wrong, is very, very not even close to correct. So, the reason I did this was because I didn't respect Second Venge. Or, is this Second Venge? I don't know, I didn't respect Vengeance. And this is just kind of the greediest possible way to play this. AKA, I hope their hand is triple Water Grave and just move, push all in. Much better is sacrificing Ahri. What I should have done was put the elusive all the way on the outside, sacrifice the Ahri, but recall a sign-in, and just get my sign-in draw in while I can. Because they're not going to be able to level Maokai this turn. So get the sign-in draw in while it's possible would have been better, but this time I lose, again, most of my damage, but they decided not to block with the Maokai, luckily, so we get an extra 3 from that. Just because they were respectful of the Twin Disciplines, which in my head means no second Maokai. So we go in next turn. They indeed did not have anything. Their hand was a complete disaster this game. They tapped like Sulter, and then they were able to, I think, challenge away something. Or they might have just held the challenge. But they tapped like Sulter, played it on turn 11, and then turn 12 we just open attack. I don't even open attack, just fucking attack for lethal. But yeah, their hand was a disaster in game 2. Complete disaster. I mean, my gameplay was a disaster in game 2. That was a tragedy from both sides, to be honest. I played that so poorly, and they drew so poorly. But anyway, game 3, here we go. Rumble versus Evelyn Maokai. This is the mulligan. So I have turn 4 attack here, which is very nice. Their really only way to remove Rumble is 8 spike damage, Evelyn spell, Vengeance plus ping. So they only run 2 Vengeance, which means if I have 3 Rumble, I probably win. But as it stands, turn 4 Rumble isn't answerable by Vengeance, so I can just at least play Rumble Great Hammers and get it. Fallen Rider is nice with the Rumble. I just want some other stuff that I can discard. I top take an Armed Acquisitioner, which is nice. Gonna discard that on turn 4. And indeed, here is another interesting spot where I almost misplayed, which was Culling Strike on Scarab versus no Culling Strike on Scarab. And it is kind of unclear what the right move is. So obviously my Rumble comes down next turn, and I've got a nice attack. And I would really love to put these the weapon on the Rumble, which means I have to bank 2 mana, which means I can't cull. And that ended up being the logic with which I went. But indeed, I discard the Rumble. They play a 6 HP Evelyn, which definitely justifies the put the Great Hammers on the Rumble idea. Because if I instead culled on the previous turn, I wouldn't even be able to attack here. It would just be a complete disaster, and they'd probably be able to stall me out. But here we get to crash through for 5 damage, halfway level up the Rumble, and the opponent is in trouble. They ended up getting Elusive Husk, they hit me up for 9, but obviously I'm killing them way faster than they're killing me. We're going in on turn 6, and they commit 3 spells to the stack. Got Hate Spike, Vile Feast. Rumble's taking 6 damage, in this case. So my form-up doesn't actually save me. I have to do Culling Strike, because this Culling Strike technology that I've included as 2x in my Rumble deck is able to save my ass here and actually push through lethal because I've got a Flame Spitter to commit the last 3 damage. So indeed, Culling Strike seals the game here, and that's game 3. But also I want to, you know, further gas up the Hate Spike because, or not gas up the Hate Spike, gas up the Culling Strike, because it's actually even better than it looks, because this second Culling Strike in hand is insulating me against literally any other card they could have. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter Undergrowth, it doesn't matter Feast, it doesn't matter Hate Spike, anything. It gets all of it, it gets answered by Culling Strike. So, well, all of it gets answered by a combination of Culling Strike and this +2/+2 that I have. But like, the third Hate Spike is like the main danger. But like, holy moly, man. This is a great Culling Strike. That's game 2, or that's game 3. And that is the set for the week. We won 1-2 even though we dropped the first game, and that brings us to the standings where we are sitting at a big tie for first at the end of week 4, and that is and next week tune in on Monday for the stream and Tuesday for the YouTube video. We're against Spids, who is sitting in first place, so first versus second place heavyweight matchup next week. So thanks for watching.